Hello and welcome back to Seconds Out. My name is Eamon Khan here in my neck of the woods, Birmingham, for a change with 258 Management's Will Harvey. Will, feel like we're getting more acquainted with these sit-downs. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well, Eamon. Yeah, nice to be in your neck of the woods. It's a beautiful part of the world.
Well, it doesn't often get that acknowledgement, but yeah, I'm glad you see some of the beauty in Birmingham.
Yeah, it's actually a very nice day today, to be fair. So spring's around the corner. So yeah, I'm pleased to be here. It's a very exciting week ahead. So yeah, we're good to go, mate.
If we start where we ended off last time, I've seen little shoots, little glimpses of delicious TV. Derek Chisora grabbing the mic. I asked about it before, but I've seen it now. It looks like he's really thriving.
It is. I think the subscriber base is growing quite well. You guys need to keep an eye over your shoulder. Yeah, he's loving delicious TV. He's quite an I guess what's the word? Original interview style that Derek has. But he's really enjoying it. It's just a bit of fun, to be honest. And like I said to you before, it's just exciting for Derek to be, and for us as a team to be getting opportunities for Derek outside of boxing while he still figures out what he wants to do going forward, which, we are still waiting for kind of proper conversations on that. That will happen at some time, and he'll let us know what he wants to do. But whilst we're waiting for that, we're keeping him busy. As I said, he's got his podcast, which is about to come out. We're working on the book. Delicious TV's popping off very nicely. So yeah, it's fun times with Dale. He's enjoying himself at the moment.
Looking forward to that, and also looking forward to the return of Ben Whittaker, someone who the West Midlands, which is where we are, can really kind of get behind. He takes on Jordan Grant this weekend. Is the plan with Ben Whittaker to keep him obviously active, but active in the West Midlands as well, to kind of build that fandom around him? An area in which we don't really have anyone really that big that can really get behind, and Ben seems to be that talent that we can get behind.
I think so. I mean, look, Ben's got ambitions that are, far outweigh just boxing in Birmingham. Of course, he wants to, obviously box all around the UK, and he wants to box internationally as well. So these are all ambitions that he has. But for sure, I was having this conversation with somebody just earlier today. I've heard we've done 5,500 tickets for tomorrow night, which I think is really exciting, because there's some good young. It's 5,500 tickets with a headline act that's actually not from Birmingham, but on the undercard, obviously there's Ben, who's very well known, but there's some good, exciting local guys that have done quite a few tickets as well that are on the undercard too. So the fact that the show has managed to generate this much interest and this many ticket sales, I think is really exciting for the local area. Obviously, Ben cares massively about the West Midlands. He wants to promote it as much as possible. And I think going forward in the next couple of years, we can see, just by the success of this show, that we can keep bringing fights back to this area, and these guys are going to sell tickets and generate excitement. So I hope this is the first of many times that we come back here. Certainly, initially, it looks really, really promising as an area to put fights on. So I am sure we'll see a lot of people come back here, and of course we want Ben to be at the forefront of that, no doubt.
There's a feeling that Ben can be and will be put on the fast track. You'll tell me more so if that is the case. Is he ready for that fast track towards world title contention, more so than other fighters? And does maybe the injuries he's had in the past maybe need to put him on that fast track too, because of the injuries that he's had?
I don't think so. No, I don't think the injuries mean that he needs to be put on the fast track. I think entirely the opposite. Actually, I think particularly with the injury that he's just coming back off now, I think Jordan Grant's a great opponent. He's going to come and he's going to let his hands go. Ben's managed to get under his skin very effectively in the last couple of days already. So I think he's going to provide a good level of opposition, but also an exciting opposition. But we are still easing Ben back into professional boxing. He's had a long layoff, and we're not looking, hopefully all going well, we can get him out quite soon again after, but we've made no promises to Boxer as to his availability until we've got this fight out of the way and we've assessed how his body is. So we're not looking to rush him back because he's had the injuries and we feel like he needs to fast track him. Ben, look, everybody knows the skill set that Ben has got. He's a very well decorated amateur. And stylistically, I think he's suited really well to the pros. So the level at which he can operate is very high, but we have the same kind of approach with Frazer, to be honest. And I understand that people are always going to want these guys to be put into big, proper fights straight away. And I can fully understand that. But the reality is, as managers and as people that are looking after his career, you have to mitigate all risks at play. And we will progress Ben mainly just to get his body, his engine accustomed to going the longer distances. He's done WSB fights in the amateurs, which is dipping your toe into the kind of professional game, which is great. But more often than not, he's used to doing 3-3s. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what his wheelhouse has been. So a big part of this early part of his career is obviously developing with Sugar, learning new things with Sugar, because the way that Sugar trains his fighters is very different to a lot of other coaches. So there's time that needs to be allowed for that to kind of bed in, which we are doing. But there's also time that needs to be allowed where we can gradually move him into six. Well, he's starting on 6 rounds, but move him into 8, 10 rounders, so that he knows what it feels like to be in and around those championship rounds, and then you can chuck him into the big fights. Because what you don't want to do is, someone can be as skillful as they like, but if they've not experienced how to manage your energy across longer distances into 8, 9, 10, 11 rounds, if someone's there that's not going to be put away quite easily, you can suddenly find yourself in quite tricky waters. So all it is with Ben, which won't take a very long time, is just gradually progressing the rounds with the right opponents that are going to give him those rounds. And then I'd like to see him in a British title fight, again, inside of 10 professional fights. I think that's entirely achievable. If you ask him, he's going to say he wants it in 3. I understand that, because he's a fighter and he wants to make history like that. But realistically, I think if we can get Ben Whittaker to a British title fight inside of 10 fights, we'll all be very happy with that. And then, once he's achieved that, it's, it depends. The world is oyster. He can defend it a few times before moving on. But if he doesn't want to, he can probably take the approach that we took with the Coley, for example, where you win the belt and you're moving straight onto European. As soon as he's got his body used to and he's conditioned to doing those longer rounds as and when he needs to, then the curve will be quite a lot steeper. But certainly at this start of his career, sorry, I'm rambling on a bit now, I know, but at the start of his career, we just got to gradually ease him in, and then when he's up and used to fighting those rounds, then he'll really put the foot down.
Not rambling on at all. And when it comes to speaking, when Ben speaks, we listen. But Ben's got a personality which is Marmite, I believe, to some people. I personally like it. I like that outward brash cockiness in a fighter. But when Ben gets to the top, do you feel like he'll have the eyes on him because of his fighting ability, or maybe because, like the Mayweather effect, the Hammond effect, people will kind of want to see him get beaten because of that cockiness?
Yeah, I think both. And I say this to Ben the whole time, and he already understands it. Whether they're tuning in to see you win or tuning in to see you lose, it doesn't really matter. As long as they're tuning in and paying their money to watch you, it doesn't really matter. And Floyd Mayweather, like you said, is the epitome of that. But one thing you have to make sure, which I don't have any concerns with Ben, is that you can be this brash, cocky character. Of course you can, but fundamentally you've got to back it up in the ring, right? Like you can't to kind of talk the talk without walking the walk. So I believe that regardless of what he does outside of the ring, there are going to be people that want to tune in to watch him fight because his style is so entertaining. It's such an engaging. Like I'm not, as I always refer back to the debut, but I honestly can't think of a debut that we've seen that's remotely like the performance that he put on. I think he's such an entertaining fighter to watch. So regardless of what he's doing outside the ring, whether people love him or hate him, they're still going to be tuning in. But obviously there's this kind of Marmite factor about him outside of the ring where he's this brash, cocky character, which I think is only going to accentuate and exaggerate the type of draw that he can be because of his fighting style, if that makes sense. So it's going to be a bit of both. But as you say, Naz there is another one. These kind of controversial characters, for better or worse, people are always looking to tune in and watch them. So I think Ben's very much going to be one of those guys, and I'm looking forward to the journey.
We might have thought on this card we might be tuning in to watch to see Frazer Clarke too, but that isn't the case. There is the potential that Frazer now steps in to take on Fabio Wardley for the British heavyweight title. What is the current status with Frazer?
So yeah, the hope was to have Frazer on this card because again it's Frazer's local area, but obviously with the cut that he got in the Dinu fight from the head clash, it just made that time frame quite unrealistic, which is a real shame, to be honest. he was ordered to fight Fabio, which is fantastic. Now we've actually got a meeting tomorrow as a team to kind of go through a few bits. He had signed to fight on June 10th, and that fight was signed before the board announced and mandated him to fight Fabio. So if you ask Frazer, he's ready to go into that fight tomorrow, and he is ready to go into that fight tomorrow from this, just in terms of his skill set against Wardley. I believe he beats him very easily. If you're asking me, again, going back to that point I made about trying to mitigate all risks, Frazer's done more than 4 rounds once in his pro career so far. So again, I believe he beats Wardley easily inside of 5 or 6 rounds. But if Wardley doesn't go away as easy as he hopes, I don't want Frazer to then be in 8, 9, 10, 11 rounds in waters that he hasn't been in yet, where potentially you get yourself into sticky situations. And so as a team, I think we would like to see Frazer have a fight where he can get some proper championship style rounds in him, 8, 9, 10 rounds. And then we would look to fight Wardley after that. But the reality is it's a tough one to predict at the moment, because we have to see where the purse bids go on May 10th, because if Boxer are able to win that purse bid, then that time frame becomes a bit easier. If Matchroom win it, then look, I still think, if Eddie's been talking about putting on stadium shows and stuff, like I've been involved in seeing how these stadium shows are put on. It takes a lot longer than you anticipate, so I'm not too sure on those time frames anyway. We'll have to just wait and see. But Frazer is going to fight Fabio by September 23rd. That's the reality of the situation. That's what he's been ordered to do. So that is going to happen. We just have to see how it plays out with purse bids and then see exactly where that is going to fall. And as I said, we're going to sit down as a team tomorrow and have a meeting about that.
Were you surprised that the fight was ordered between the two?
I don't think so, because I know that David Adelaide came out and was quite vocal about how he felt like he'd been hard done by. And, he's had, I think, 10 fights, 11 fights, whatever it is. But I don't think, so really, from what I could see, in my opinion, so with Wardley being the champion, who were the realistic options to get mandated? I think it was probably Adelaide, Dakers, or Frazer. Those are the 3 kind of big names that I think were probably in line. And Adelaide and Dakers, with all due respect, I don't know that their resumes necessarily provide that much more evidence that they should be the ones that are mandated over Frazer. I think Bogdan Dinu, although Frazer dealt with him quite straightforwardly, is possibly a better, as good a name as any of the names that Adelaide or Dakers have got. So, I'm not surprised in that regard, to be honest. I know he's only had 6 fights, but again, he's coming off a big amateur pedigree. He's an Olympic bronze medalist. I think that probably does factor into the board's decision as well. Our job as management is to try and not so much lobby the boards, but to try and put our fighters forward to be mandated for the shot. Frazer, we've always had the plan for Frazer to fight for the British title inside of 10 fights. So I've obviously been speaking to the board, speaking to Robert Smith, trying to get, put Frazer at the front of that queue, because that's in the best interest of our fighter. I don't know who Dakes has got around him that's doing that, or Adelaide. You'd have to ask them, but I think potentially that, we have made a case for Frazer to be mandated and made the mandatory challenger, which potentially went some way as well. But I do just think, objectively, he's more than a valid fighter to be mandated, particularly over those 2. So no, not really surprised, to be honest. I thought it was the correct call.
If the fight doesn't happen for whatever reason, what do you feel the backlash will be if Frazer doesn't fight for the British title next? And do you think it's warranted if there is backlash, or fair if Frazer didn't take the fight?
There's always going to be backlash, that you can't do anything in this game without the fans criticizing you, and I understand that's not a problem. If Frazer doesn't, I believe that whichever party wins the purse bids, whether it's Matchroom, whether it's Boxer, whoever, or even somebody else who could come in and try and make a bid for it, I believe that Frazer fights Fabio between September and December of this year. If it's not next, it's because, like I said, we've got an agreement to fight on June 10th as it stands, and then you have to work out scheduling and stuff. So if it's not next, there will be a wave of backlash inevitably because people will think that he's ducking or that he doesn't want to fight and blah, 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 which is fine. But he is going to fight Fabio between September and December of this year. And whether he has one fight before it, 2 fights before it, or no fights before it, we have to see how the cards fall. But he might receive a wave of criticism if it's not next. But again, I can only promise people that he's going to fight him this year, and it's going to be a massive fight, and he's going to win. And then I think there's huge domestic fights on Sky for Frazer at heavyweight. I don't know, just the 2 names that I mentioned there would be great fights for him. Jamie TKV would be a great fight for him when he's got a few more wins under his belt. There's huge fights to be made domestically there, so I'm just excited to get the Wardley fight done, get Frazer British champion, and then we can look at some really, really good nights heading into next year.
Who's on the short list for June 10th?
We've got a name, but we're not in a position. I think we're not in a position to kind of announce that yet. So we'll have to. You have to watch this space on that. There's a few things at play. So, like I said, we'll know more in the next couple of weeks probably.
Moving on to another heavyweight. Look, obviously, there's a lot of talk when it comes to Anthony Joshua and his next steps. Thomas Hauser, established journalist, has kind of put his article forward about what Joshua should do, which has received mixed reception. His point was that the best step for Joshua would be to retire, considering fights with Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury might be next or on the horizon. Those are fights for him that could hurt him or hurt any fighter in general, I suppose. Yeah. Just what was your initial reaction when you heard the call from Hauser that Joshua's next best step should be to retire? Yeah,
I'm surprised. I haven't seen the article myself, but I will definitely look at it after this interview. I'm surprised. I mean, I don't know too much about, like I said, what was said in the article. It's surprising to hear. Obviously, particularly at heavyweight, there's risks involved with any fight that you take, and any time that you get into the ring, there's massive risks. So, it's, he's kind of stating the obvious there. Should Anthony retire? I don't. Again, is he saying that just because of the apparent risks that he thinks are associated? Yeah. Well, then in that case, he should never have got in the ring in the first place, in my opinion. I don't really understand that as a point. Obviously, massively disagree with what he's saying. I can tell you from our side that AJ has, retirement is the furthest thing from his mind. He's a competitor at heart. He's still got the hunger to become a 3-time world champion. Still very much a goal of his. We've got some exciting conversations going on at the moment. He's going to box. If it was purely down to me, I'd love to see him box twice again this year. But whether it's once or twice, we have to have a few more conversations and see how that falls. But yeah, I mean, I don't read too much into it. Everybody's got their own opinion. People like to say things to get a bit of traction, and that's why you're asking me about it in this interview, and that's why a lot of people will be asked about the comments that he's made. Journalists sometimes just like to kind of trying to throw some bait out there and see who bites and stuff. So, he's entitled to his opinion. He's a very respected journalist. Fair play to him. But from my side and from our side as a team, we obviously massively disagree with what he's saying. I don't really see where he's coming from with that. But that's fine. AJ gets criticism the whole time from a variety of different people. So I doubt it's moved his needle one bit, if he even knows about the article.
Yeah, I mean, just on that point as well, look, obviously people will have their thoughts and feelings about Anthony Joshua. There is also a feeling that, Anthony Joshua has kind of shouldered a lot of the British boxing boom on his back for a number of years. Is there a level of disappointment that you feel when, journalists of that ilk kind of have this feeling about Joshua that he should retire after having, really kind of building the success in the last few years in Britain?
I do, and I feel like Simon Jordan is another one that loves to just berate AJ, and I think, but again, we're old enough and ugly enough to understand how the game works by this point. The way that it always goes in history, and even this is actually even talking from a perspective outside of boxing. It comes with any kind of sports star or any kind of individual that's in the public eye. They, in this country anyway, they like to build you up so that they can tear you down. That's the way that things always go. So Anthony has been a superstar for the best part of, coming up to 10 years now probably. And throughout the majority of that, since he's been a really recognised and household name, there have been people that get a kick and probably get a few more clicks and probably earn a few more pounds when he's seen, when there's a story out there that can try and tear him down. So these guys, like, again, we're used to it now. It doesn't really faze us. I think it's a shame to see because, as you say, I think what he's done for the sport in this country is unparalleled, and it will probably only be when he retires that he actually gets the respect that he deserves, and people will really realise what he has done for this sport. Because, you know, look, Carl Froch sold out 8,000 people at Wembley against Draw Groves. That's huge, and we've had stadium fights throughout history. Ben Eubank was at Old Trafford, so, you know, it's not unheard of to have these kind of fights. But one thing I will say is, and you can speak to Eddie Hearn about this, when AJ came on the scene, he was the first fighter in the history to be consistently selling out stadiums of 80, 90,000 plus. You know, I think a lot of the success of Matchroom and Eddie, they will accredit to the work that he's done with Anthony. I think when Anthony came on the scene in 2012, 2013, whenever he made his debut, there was such a big boom in the attention that was brought on this sport that fighters that were lucky enough to be around in the same era as him, Tony Bellew possibly is one of these guys, that before AJ came onto our screens was earning probably a third of what he ended up earning towards the end of his career, because again, these kind of big pay-per-view nights, I think, became much more achievable for fighters that probably weren't as famous as AJ, purely because the eyes that Anthony drew onto the sport in this country off the back of him was massive. You know, I think it became one of the prominent sports in this country when he started fighting. So what he's done for the sport, for the fighters, for the journalists that work in the sport, everybody that's associated with it has earned more as a result of Anthony Joshua's involvement over the last 10 years. So they all need to be grateful for him. And it is sad to see that a lot of people try and tear him down. But as I said, it's a culture of this country, which is sad to see. And as I said again, I don't think it will be until he actually retires that he will really get the recognition that he deserves. But, you know, that's not why he does it. You know, he does it to provide for his family, for generations of his family, and he does it for the legacy that he can look back on. So, you know, it is what it is, and he's fine about it.
On a couple of things, there was an outward projection that Joshua will be fighting multiple times this year. He had the fight with Franklin, and we were expecting maybe a middle fight and then a fight towards the back end of the year. That now doesn't seem to be the case because there are the whispers of this Saudi tournament. It maybe seems likely that Saudi tournament isn't just whispers, it's actually going to happen. Maybe that's put the kibosh on the middle fight because Joshua's waiting, as are other heavyweights, for that opportunity in Saudi Arabia. Is that the case? What is the current status in terms of Joshua's next fight?
That is somewhat the case, to be honest. Like I said, there are some positive conversations going on behind the scenes, but I think I said this in my last interview with you, or maybe it was with Danny. I think we've made the mistake in the past of being far too, in my opinion, open with the current status of these conversations, and it leads to egos getting involved, people doing kind of negotiations publicly, which I just don't think helps the situation. So what I will say is there are positive conversations going on, of course. I think it's a really exciting idea about the ideas that these guys have got to take place in December. But until we've got something concrete, I don't think we need to give it too much airtime. I think we need to just let the people that need to have the conversations and that are involved in these conversations have them behind closed doors. And when there's something firm, we can announce it to everybody. Sorry about that. We can announce it to everybody, because otherwise I think like when you have like I said, when you have these kind of negotiations in the public domain, I just don't think it necessarily ends very well. So what you're saying is right. I think we've got to have these conversations about the opportunity in December to figure out exactly when and if AJ is going to be getting in the ring in the summer. Another thing we have to consider is what Derek wants. You know, Derek will probably make the call. Derek and AJ together will make the call about whether or not they want to fight in August. So they need to sit down and have a chat. But there's a few moving parts at the moment which will determine whether or not it's possible to have that fight in the summer. So we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, I think for now, from where I'm sat, I would like to just see the guys that need to have, because I'm not, Freddie's going to lead these conversations from our side and Eddie and Frank. So I think we need to just let them have those conversations, have those discussions. And when we've got something concrete, then we can announce it to you and say, look, this is the plan for the rest of the year. And until then, I think we should just kind of keep our cards close to our chest on it.
Just making sure I haven't got my wires crossed there. You're talking about Derek and AJ potentially fighting each other?
No, sorry, Derek James, his trainer.
Sorry.
Yeah. No. Derek versus AJ. I mean, Derek Chisora might love that fight, but no, sorry, Derek James and AJ will make the call together on if he's going to be available to fight in the summer.
Quick question: it sounds far fetched, but is it actually possible that all the names that are rumored to be on that card will feature on the same card? Is that an actual possibility?
I think that's the idea. Yeah. I mean, looking around at the landscape, Wilder has been quite public and open about how he's up for that as a concept. I think we've said that we're open to that as a concept as well. Usyk, I've seen some interviews with Alex Krasik, I think, or maybe it was Aegis, I can't remember who, but they said that they think it's a great idea. Usyk is not attached to any broadcaster, so in terms of the politics, it's pretty easy to get a deal done with Usyk, and I can't imagine that Usyk really wants to fight anyone outside of those top three guys. The Fury side, I'm sure I haven't heard much from the Fury camp, but again, perhaps they're kind of keeping their cards close to their chest on it, which would be great. But I can only hope and assume that they would be up for it as well. So look, yeah, I think it's there and it's possible to make happen, and I don't see why all the various individual parties wouldn't be excited by it, because it's kind of been something that I've always thought of as a pipe dream, but would be so amazing to have essentially like a tournament where the big four have a round robin with each other. How amazing would that be for the fans to be able to watch something like that and to have them on the same night? It would just be crazy. As a fan, I think that it's such a fantastic thing to happen. So if there's anywhere that can make it happen, it's in the Middle East. These guys, they work very professionally. They've got the resources to make it happen. So like I said, we'll have to just wait and see. But me as a fan, I think it would be an amazing thing.
And finally, I wanted to ask you, look, because those whispers are heavy about that fight with Deontay Wilder, and we've talked about kind of critics and there always being critics around on anti-Joshua and whatever step he takes. It sounds like a straightforward question, but I'll ask it you anyway. Will Joshua beating someone like Deontay Wilder silence those critics about being gun-shy, about his chin, about his desire? Do you feel those will finally go away if he gets that big win over someone like Deontay Wilder?
Yeah, definitely, probably. But again, I just think it just shows how fickle some of these commentators are. Whether it's fans, people leaving comments on social media, or journalists or whatever. I just think they're all so fickle sometimes. So I don't I believe that AJ obviously goes in and beats Wilder. I think he's more than capable of doing that. But I don't think he's done that, he's any different a fighter to the fighter that beat Franklin. He's the same fighter doing the same thing, trying to achieve the same goals. So he is who he is. I don't think it necessarily means that he's suddenly this great fighter, has got this great chin, and is always gun shy. I think he's always stayed consistent with the way in which he approaches his fights. So I don't think it changed anything. But from a fan or a commentator's perspective, then yeah, inevitably once he beats Wilder, they'll be saying he's the best thing since sliced bread again. But I just think that's them just being fickle. So again, I try not to pay too much attention to it.
Well, good conversation. We'll leave it there. Thanks for speaking to Seconds Out, sir.
Cheers, mate.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.